years is the only thing that's going to change things for the better in America is for the people to find some humility and unite with one another, because breaking off into these tribes and playing the whole left-right game and the blue-red game is exactly what the deep state of America wants. As long as they can keep us divided over there, they can do with us whatever they want.
Yeah, divide and conquer is an age-old means of control. I mean, you're there on a tourist visa. Have you had a chance to get out of Moscow and see Russia, see this massive country, these with such diverse people? And I mean, I would recommend that if you do to go do that, you'll see an amazing country full of diversity in terms of the ethnicities, the cultures, the languages, but also just the terrain. I mean, Moscow's a beautiful city, though. It takes a long time just to get a grip on Moscow. But where do you say that you're writing right now? You say you're doing stuff. What are you doing right now? How can people follow you? How can they follow your work? And what are your plans? Do you have any any thoughts about expanding your presence in Russia, coordinating, collaborating with people? How can Americans follow Greg Reese?
They can find my work at reesereport.com, which has the links to my Substack and all my video channels to see my articles and my videos. Primarily, I'm a video producer, and I've been putting them in article form for about the past year. But yes, I definitely see expanding things. Like I said, on the plane ride over here, I don't understand exactly what's going on in American politics anymore. I think you have to be in a secret society to really know what's going on with American politics. It's way over my head, and I don't get it. But one of the things I do understand is making friends with people and opening my mind to people in different cultures and exploring. And that is one thing I was hoping to do on the flight over here, is explore Russia and get to know the people and share that experience with Americans and all English-speaking people in the West. Because it is, like you said, it's a huge country. I'm dying to go to St. Petersburg, to Siberia, to Sochi, to all over the place. It's huge. One of the best things about America is it's big, and you can just keep going and see the places. In America, growing up during the Cold War, it's interesting. Like I said, I saw a bunch of Hollywood movies and TV shows that portrayed Russia as the baddie, and they are all in the winter. Gray skies, dreary outside. And so even when I decided I was coming to Russia, I kind of thought I was going somewhere that was going to be snowing all year round, which just goes to show how ignorant I was about it and how little I know. And then I found out that Moscow is pretty much like Cleveland, which is where I grew up. Spring just broke here. I can't wait for summer. It's already getting beautiful. And like you said, it's a huge place. And everyone tells me the same thing. They say Moscow is lovely and the people are great, but the further you get out, the nicer people are and the more charming everything is. So I definitely look forward to that.
And you made a brief reference to a Marine Corps background. What were you in the Marines? And if so, what did you do in the Marine Corps?
I joined during Desert Shield, before Desert Storm kicked off. I was 19 years old. It seemed like World War III was about to break out. And even back then, I didn't really, like I said, I didn't trust the U.S. government. But I was young and dumb and angry, and I figured it was my time. And fortunately, I missed it, because my friends that were there, they would have all told me it's a good thing that you missed it. But the Desert Storm kicked off and ended while I was in Parris Island boot camp. I signed up for infantry. I was a rifleman. I was this close to getting in intelligence because of my ASVAB, but I'm colorblind, so that kept me out of there. But yeah, I did my time in the Marine Corps. Never saw combat, which honestly, and this is no dig against American veterans, but from what I know about the wars that America have fought and how pretty much every single one is based on some type of corporate agenda, Once again, this is no disrespect to any veterans, but I do feel grateful that I was spared that getting out before. The closest I came was they sent us to Haiti at the last minute during their coup in 1992, and we were training with the CIA to go in and evacuate Americans, but that was called off at the last minute.
Well, I share your, I was in the Marine Corps. I enlisted in the military initially in 1979 at the age of 17, and spent time. And I was in Desert Storm, but I left affiliation with the government and the military service in 1998, and I always say that I'm grateful that I missed 9/11 and the post 9/11 thing. Not because, again, I share your sentiment. It's no dig on any American veterans. I honor everybody who wears the uniform. It's, they don't make policy, they implement policy, and it's up to the American people to ensure their government doesn't send their young men and women off to fight in wars that aren't worthy of the sacrifice we're asking them to make. But I'm eternally grateful that I missed the post 9/11 period, because I just am glad that I didn't have to participate in wars that aren't worthy of a single drop of American blood, and definitely not worthy of the slaughter of innocent Iraqis, Afghans, and others that occurred. So I share your sentiment, but I thank you for your service. I thank you for having the courage to sign up, and you have my condolences for picking Uncle Sam's Misguided Children as the brand, but it is what it is. It's, the dress blues, baby. I think your military, your status, not just in the military, but as a Marine. One thing that the Marine Corps does instill in you is pride, a pride in yourself and a pride in being a member of the team, the Marine team. And I noticed that when I go to Russia, I see people that are imbued with similar pride. I see people who are very proud of being Russians, proud of their history, proud of their heritage. And it's hard to explain this to Americans. One of the things that I struggle with is how to explain Russia to Americans. Because in America, we have what I would call the American dream or the American ideal. But we don't have the American soul. In Russia, they have the Russian soul. And to contrast what that means, the depth of emotion that's attached to being a Russian and the complexity that arises from emotions. I mean, emotions, aren't necessarily the most stable of things upon which to build, to define yourself. But the Russian soul is real. I haven't been able to quite put my fingers around it, but it's real. Every Russian I meet exudes the Russian soul. Do you have a similar experience? Did you see that with the Russians, or am I somebody who's maybe getting a little too old?
No, I absolutely see it. I in some ways I can relate to it. I would describe it as enduring suffering. I'm not. No reason for me to get into it, but I have a background from childhood and experience where I understand what it is to endure suffering and overcome, and a lot of Americans don't. And in a lot of ways, that's a blessing to not maybe have that experience, but that does seem to be a major component to humanity is the dark night of the soul, having a situation to overcome, and collectively, this has been just talking to Russians. Many Russians have told me this is why they have that soul that you're talking about, which is 1,000 years of enduring suffering. That's probably the thing I noticed the most when I came here was this difference, this distinction, the Russian soul, as I would. This is when I'm describing the Russian people as being united and having a love for one another that you can feel, not divided. Another thing I've noticed is in America, it's extremely important for people to have an opinion. Everyone wants to have their opinion be heard. They feel it's very important to have their opinion. I don't seem to notice that here so much. There's just an overall maturity of the soul here. And what I can tell and what I'm learning is I think it's come from enduring the suffering that they have. 1,000 years of it, so it's in their genetics, and 100 years of it, pretty bad for the past 100 years. So it's all in their direct memory of how they got through it together, would be my guess. And in America, we don't have that. In America, they actually sort of encourage us to have this independent opinion, sort of arrogance. We're encouraged through Hollywood. We're encouraged by being spoiled to think that we're superior to everyone else. And we're encouraged to be, to be like the rap stars or the NBA players, to make millions of dollars and have bling. And that will kill a soul. And it's very different here. So, yeah, I see it very deeply.
Well, I noticed you're not wearing the big gold chain with the dollar sign around your neck, so Russia obviously hasn't corrupted you yet. You're a reporter. I'm involved in in journalism. Freedom of speech is everything for Americans. That's the cornerstone of America, and we tend to define everything based upon that litmus test. But in America, I mean, as you know yourself, freedom of speech is under attack, and yet this freedom, this foundational freedom that we have, what does it give us? We have homeless in the streets. We have crumbling infrastructure. We have almost a fatally divided nation. In Russia, we tend to attack Russia in the United States as a place where there are no freedoms. The Russian people are oppressed. First of all, without I don't want you to dig too deep, but when you meet with the Russians, do you feel like they are oppressed, that they're repressed, that they can't speak, that there's no freedom of speech? And then an extension of that is, how free do you see Russian society? I mean, when we talk about freedom, how would you define freedom in Russia and contrast that with how we define freedom in America? Do you see a distinction between the two?
Yeah. In America, we're just so trained with this word freedom, land of the free, freedom. And meanwhile, we're losing so much freedom. And as an American, I was very taken by 1776 from a very young age. It kind of created my personality. So I'm one of those Americans who is very fond of the word freedom and seduced by the word freedom. And I used to be almost an anarchist, over the top with freedom, like we should have absolute freedom and government's no good. And growing up, like I said, never trusting my own government, I almost assumed all governments were corrupt and governments are bad. But going through COVID, I realized the true nature of humanity, of the psychology of humanity, and how, like it or not, we are not intelligent enough of a species collectively to live without government. I can't believe the younger Greg in me can't believe I'm hearing myself say that, but I've learned a lot through COVID. I've changed my views a lot, and I see the value of government. I see the need for it. I'm even open to monarchies. Whatever works, whatever gives people an opportunity to have the freedom to live their life in a decent, good, healthy way. And that's how I view freedom now. Freedom isn't to be allowed to have gay pride parades and do all the drugs you want. Freedom is because we can't handle that. That's one of the things I've learned. Freedom is to be able to live your life and experience what every human has coming for them, which is love, heartbreak, suffering, and the freedom to have your own dark night of the soul, to face your own struggles and to grow, to worship God in the way that you want. So yeah, I see a lot more freedom here. I see a government that seems to care about the people. And coming from America, especially through COVID, you don't get that at all in America. It seems almost like America is committing national suicide. It's literally encouraging parents to castrate their children in the name of this transsexual LGBT phenomenon. And the only way to explain that is the influential nature of collective humanity and the irresponsible actions of a government that's actually influencing these people to do evil things. And the flip side I see, like, for example, I've been told here the only real censorship that happens here is the LGBTQ thing, which makes sense, because if children... Really, if you're going to have freedom, who deserves the freedom more than anyone? I would say an innocent child. And the innocent child deserves the freedom to go out and live their life and enjoy life and grow up without, having a freak show up in their face like what happens in America. And I mean, some things are definably evil, I think.
Yeah. No, I'll tell you, some of the more interesting discussions I had in Russia was over the issue of gay rights and LGBTQ and the difference between the American approach and the Russian approach to dealing with it. And I was left singularly impressed by the strong sense of family values that were based upon religion and identity as a nation. In the election that just happened. I've talked to many Americans about this in Russia, about the Russian election, and they all focus on the 88% that Vladimir Putin pulled in terms of the percentage of the vote. And they see, it's a dictatorship. It's a dictatorship. He, did this, that, and the other thing, suppressed opposition, da-da-da-da. But they never talk about the other number, the 77%, a record high level of participation. In America in 2020, when we had two polarizing figures that brought out the largest vote in history, Donald Trump and Joe Biden, the percentage was 66%. The Russians brought out 77% of their eligible voters to participate in this election. And that means that the Russian people believe in something that's greater than one man. They believe in Russia. They believe in themselves. It was a vote of self-certification, and it would just be nice if my country could self-certify in such a convincing fashion. We have a lot to learn from the Russians, and I am eternally grateful for people like yourself, Greg, who have the courage to go to Russia, to see Russia, and report back from Russia. And I really look forward to hearing your report. So once again, if you could tell the audience how can they find your work, and give us an idea of what you might have planned for the future.
Well, you can find my work at reesereport.com, REESE, and that is going to have links to all my video and my Substack, which is, if you prefer written articles, you can go to the Substack. You can expect to see more of the work I've been doing, which is I basically am looking at the big picture and trying to pick 2 stories a week of what I think are important for people to ask questions about. I don't claim to have answers. And the more I learn, the more questions I have, because most of what I learn is that we've been lied to. It's just lie after lie after lie. Hopefully what people can look forward to seeing from me in the future is going to be a more, in my opinion, for lack of a better word, humanitarian aspect of my work, reaching out and learning in a humble way. I think as an American especially, it's very humbling to come to a foreign nation as an immigrant with, to learn. Americans are so busy complaining about immigrants coming to America and how great America is. It's quite humbling. And so that's what I look forward to in the future, is learning a lot more about Russia throughout the whole country and reporting that back to everyone else.
Well, Greg, it's an absolute pleasure to meet you and have this conversation with you today. And I look forward to watching you as you go on this journey, and hopefully we can talk again in the future about your experiences in Russia. But again, Greg Reese, American historian, reporter, and newly moved to Russia. I look forward to talking with you in the future.
Thank you, Scott. Me too. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's fine. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. We started off with, I think, very depressing aspect of the reality of the world we live in, talking about the Crocus City Hall concert venue attack, the terrorism. But I think we ended on an optimistic note. We have an American, Greg Reese, in Russia, experiencing Russia, learning about Russia. And he's the perfect kind of person to collect the information about the reality of Russia and transmit it back to an American audience, and also to talk to a Russian audience about the reality of America. We need this kind of dialogue, especially today, more now than ever. And thanks for tuning into this show. Remember, the motto of the show is knowledge is power. And I think by watching today's interview, you were certainly empowered by knowledge. This is Scott Ritter. I'll see you again next week.